First of all, I would like to thank you for accepting our interview request.
Pleasure.
So I'll start with ISIS, a new upgraded version of terrorism.
I think there's no doubt that Islamic State, ISIS, is a very dangerous organization. It has a poisonous ideology. It's particularly unpleasant and brutal and murderous, and it constitutes a threat to Iraq, to Syria, to the region, and indeed to Europe and across the world. So there's absolutely no doubt that we need to combat, to defeat this threat. But that's not something which will happen easily or quickly. It requires patience, intelligence, and consistent engagement by the international community. And the UK, with our allies and partners, including Cyprus, is part of that engagement.
US and UK leaders expressed their determination to take action against ISIS. According to the Pentagon, the USA and other allies, including Arab nations as well, have launched first airstrikes against the Islamic State militants. Was the UK involved in these first airstrikes?
The UK is absolutely involved in all the international efforts to combat ISIS with allies, partners. We were not involved in these particular airstrikes. We are, though, very involved in combating ISIS and will continue to do so.
Due to Cyprus's geographical position, the British bases in Cyprus could play a crucial role during these operations. During his recent visit in Cyprus, in Agrodiri bases, Defense Secretary Michael Fallon stated that military personnel in Cyprus have saved lives that week by delivering much needed supplies in Iraq. Will the British bases in Cyprus become more involved in these operations?
Sovereign base areas have been involved in the operations and will continue to be. Humanitarian support has been absolutely vital because of the catastrophe, humanitarian catastrophe, which ISIS activities have caused. The British bases have been used to deliver humanitarian support, and they will continue to do that.
Will they have any further role in this operation?
Well, I think the Prime Minister has made clear, we've made very clear that we're determined to do what is necessary to deal with the ISIS threat. You wouldn't expect me to comment on particular military or operational matters, but I think the commitment which the Prime Minister has made is absolutely clear. We are determined to work with allies, with partners, to deal with what is a very serious and long-term threat, not just in the region, but also across Europe. And you know, Cyprus, as our ally, our partner, our friend, right here in the Eastern Mediterranean, is clearly a country which is going to need to be involved in dealing with this problem.
You mentioned Cyprus as an ally for the UK in this operation. In what way is this cooperation taking place at this point?
Well, you'll know that the European Union, from European Council level, has made clear Europe's determination to work together to deal with this threat. Cyprus is part of the European Union. It's a valued friend and ally of Britain, and the bases are an asset for all of us.
Fears expressed by Cyprus's intelligence service suggest that the Turkish occupied areas could be used by jihadists to travel into Iraq and Syria and join ISIS. Especially if Turkey adopts stricter border rules. So does the UK share these fears?
It's very clear that Islamic State is a threat to all of us here in the region, but also more widely. Therefore, it is essential that in dealing with an organisation which doesn't respect national borders, that we have to cooperate with all our friends and allies to deal with that, and we are determined to do that, and I know the government of Cyprus is determined to do that as well. I think perhaps we need to also think, just as we are now, led by Mr. Ida having a further attempt to resolve the Cyprus problem, we just need to remember that, as Mr. Ida has pointed out, a conflict which is frozen does not always stay frozen, and this is a pretty insecure part of the world. Therefore, I think this is another example of how a settlement to the Cyprus problem is actually in the interests of Cyprus, of Cypriots, of countries in the region, and indeed of the entire European Union.
David Cameron will hold some meetings with the Iranian president later on in an effort to gain support against ISIS. We do know that the Iranian president is he criticized ISIS for their actions, but he was against the airstrikes. So can we say anything about the result of this meeting?
Well, the UN General Assembly in New York in September every year is a very important opportunity for world leaders to discuss the range of issues, and this General Assembly is no exception. There's a very challenging agenda which leaders face: climate change, Ebola, the Middle East, as well as Islamic State. So I'm sure that in all the Prime Minister's discussions he will be touching on all of these issues, and I'm sure that Islamic State is a key part of what he is discussing with a number of leaders and interlocutors in New York. It will be, it's a bit early to comment on the outcome of those discussions, but I think there's absolutely no doubt that one of the issues at the centre of attention in New York now is how we deal with this very dangerous, murderous, brutal organisation with a virulent, hateful ideology.
And last question, how do you see Cyprus right now? I mean, the cooperation between the two countries, and what are your most important goals during your stay here?
Well, since I arrived here just a month ago, I've been struck even more by the extent to which relationships between Britain and Cyprus are so close. They are unique, I think, in human terms, historical terms. We have an enormous amount which ties us together. What I'd like to do is to work with Cypriot friends and partners on the challenges which we face. For example, reforming the European Union, dealing with ISIS, finding a solution for the Cyprus problem, and also working together more effectively. One thing I said with President Anastasiades was that I heard his speech in London in January, where he said he wanted Cyprus to be part of the solution to the problems which Europe faces, and not just a problem, and that is absolutely something which we want to work with President Anastasiades on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.